What happens when a secret survives not because it's false, but because everyone involved silently agrees it should never see daylight? Because listen, there are secrets that fade with time, and then there are secrets that just sit there, sealed tight, waiting for the wrong person to stop protecting them. And this one? This one was never gentle, it was never small, and it was never accidental that Sarah Ferguson stayed quiet about it for decades. So yeah, settle in. Maybe hit like now so you don't forget later, because this one takes a minute to unfold. For years, Fergie never corrected one very specific story. She never laughed it off, never rushed to deny it, never did that polite royal thing where you squash rumors with a smile and a vague sentence. And inside royal life, that kind of silence is loud. The story itself sounds like something straight out of a whispered after-dinner conversation, a private yacht, a royal prince, a woman newly stepping into titled territory, 3 days away from the world, and an alleged consequence that would have changed everything if it ever went public. A pregnancy, a sudden cut-off, and a future rewritten before it could even begin. Now here's the thing people miss. Sarah Ferguson knew Prince Andrew, not from headlines, from real life. She knew his habits, his routines, the environments he gravitated toward, and the way certain situations were handled quietly instead of openly. She also understood ambition because she lived alongside it for decades. So when Meghan Markle arrived on the royal scene years later, this wasn't some shocking new rumor to Fergie. It was old, carefully sealed, deliberately forgotten, and never meant to resurface. Until it did. Because when the person who's been protecting the silence stops doing so, the past doesn't politely stay buried, it demands attention. And that's where things get interesting. Fergie didn't need a crash course in yacht culture. She'd seen it up close long before Meghan ever entered the picture, and that's why this part matters. Years later, Meghan tells a story about first meeting Prince Andrew. She says she didn't recognize him, that she mistook him for someone insignificant, a man holding the Queen's handbag. To the public, it sounded cute, playful, harmless, almost charming. To Fergie, it sounded impossible. Andrew wasn't obscure, he wasn't invisible, he wasn't someone you just failed to recognize, especially not if you'd studied the royal family, moved in elite circles, and later married directly into it. More importantly, Andrew wasn't a stranger in the environments Meghan had already been navigating. Fergie understood something most people don't. When someone uses distancing language like that, it's often because familiarity has become inconvenient. History needs editing. Proximity needs erasing. That valet story didn't signal innocence, it signaled separation. And separation is usually needed when something existed before the official timeline. According to information that surfaced quietly and was shared privately, the overlap between Meghan Markle and Andrew Andrews wasn't theoretical, it was physical. The account places them together in February 2002 on a private yacht off the coast of Nice. Andrew was allegedly there as a VIP guest. Meghan was allegedly present as part of the social group on board. And no, this wasn't some massive party boat where people blended into the background. This was intimate. Everyone knew who everyone else was, and everyone knew why they were there. An eyewitness, identified only through anonymity and passed on through a third party, described a noticeable shift once Andrew arrived. Attention narrowed, positioning changed. Meghan was allegedly placed almost exclusively beside him. Not subtle, not accidental. Shortly after, they were said to have withdrawn below deck, and here's where people stop calling it a moment and start calling it a stretch of time. According to the account, this wasn't a quick interaction, it was days, meals delivered privately, limited appearances, a visible separation from the rest of the group.
When they re-emerged, the dynamic had changed, the energy had shifted, and everyone on board noticed. People talked, quietly, then life moved on. For Fergie, this wasn't shocking, it was confirmation. Because some stories don't surface when they happen, they surface when the people who protected them stop doing so. And what matters most here isn't even the encounter, it's what allegedly happened after. According to the account, contact didn't end when the yacht docked. There were follow-ups, communication, an expectation that something had been established. But Andrew, however, returned to London and reportedly did what he'd done many times before. He disengaged, calls unanswered, messages ignored, eventually staff instructed to block contact entirely, doors shut, access gone. Inside royal dynamics, this is how problems are erased. Distance replaces confrontation. But here's where the story deepens, because the silence didn't come quietly. According to testimony passed on, Meghan tried repeatedly to reach Andrew after he returned to England, not casually, persistently. There was something she believed he needed to know, and this is where things stop being gossip and start being explosive. The claim is that Meghan believed she was pregnant. If true, that changes everything. Not just personally, institutionally. A child connected to Prince Andrew outside marriage, outside control, would have been catastrophic. And yet, the calls went unanswered. No response, no engagement, total severance. For someone used to access, that rejection would have been absolute. According to the account, with no response and no path forward, a decision was made. The pregnancy did not continue. After that, communication ceased entirely. Now listen, I'm not asking you to accept this as fact. I'm asking you to understand why, if even a fraction of this were true, decades of silence would suddenly make sense. Andrew would have every reason to ensure this never surfaced. Meghan would have every reason to move forward and rewrite her future, and the royal family would have every reason to bury it. No photos, no paperwork, no powerful witnesses stepping forward, just memory. The people who allegedly saw it were young, temporary guests, backpackers, not insiders with protection. Time passed, life moved on, until years later when Meghan re-entered the royal world through a different door. And that's when the past became dangerous again. Because proximity returned, history resurfaced, and when pressure builds inside powerful families, sacrifices are chosen strategically. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Meghan Markle sits in a uniquely exposed position. She's tied to the royal story, but not protected by it. No bloodline immunity, no generational shielding, and she no longer serves a purpose to the people who once defended her presence. That makes her expendable. Prince William, secure, nothing to hide, no leverage. King Charles, cautious. He understands exposure, but he also understands which pieces can fall without collapsing the system. Meghan becomes the pressure valve, the story that can be released without burning everything down. And Fergie knows this. If a truth has to surface, Meghan's truth is the safest one to surface first. This isn't a clash of opposites, it's a collision of mirrors. Fergie and Meghan share instincts, both understand access, status, how relationships become currency, and how quickly loyalty disappears when usefulness ends. For years, Fergie played the game, stayed quiet, stayed close, stayed useful. Meghan followed a similar path, aligning upward, cutting ties downward, rewriting narratives as needed. The difference, timing. Fergie learned the rules through loss and survival. Meghan assumed the rules would always bend her way. And that assumption is where things fracture. Because when two people built on the same instincts fall out, the fallout isn't emotional, it's destructive. The moment Meghan chose distance over diplomacy, she didn't just ghost an ally, she activated a witness. Fergie didn't need proof, She didn't need photos. She lived close enough to Andrew to recognize patterns, to know when stories were being managed instead of denied. And that's why this stayed buried for so long, because silence benefited everyone, until it didn't. Fergie no longer gains protection, Meghan no longer holds favor, and Andrew has always relied on others to carry his past. So what happens when the person who's been protecting the silence stops doing so? Secrets don't disappear, they wait. And when someone with memory, motive, and nothing left to lose decides to speak, even indirectly, the past doesn't whisper, it resurfaces. And once it does, the story stops being about yachts or rumors. It becomes about who knew and who chose silence. And that is the truth powerful families fear most. If you're still here, drop a comment.